So I've struggled pretty heavily with imposter syndrome. Now, I know this is not uncommon. In fact, I think you'd probably be hard-pressed to find someone who hasn't. But I thought this would be a good topic for today's video, given that there are some facts about imposter syndrome that, though we might even all recognize, at least at some times, we can often overlook just because of how pressing and how heavy it can be. I guess I'll start by defining it. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you are unqualified to be in the position that you are currently in, whether that be because you haven't received the proper amount of training, whether that be because you're new, or just because there are so many more qualified people in the world who could be filling that position and you could never hope to do as good of a job as them. If I've described something familiar to you, then this video is for you. The most palpable feeling of imposter syndrome that I ever experienced came when I joined the United States military. I felt like an imposter since stepping into my recruiter's office, though that feeling has changed and evolved over time. Now that I've been in for some time and I'm beginning to explore new pursuits in life, the imposter syndrome is shifting. Inevitably, what you'll find is that even if you get to a point where you have defeated imposter syndrome in a particular area, the goalposts move. So all of a sudden, rather than feeling like an unqualified leader or warrior or Marine, you now feel like an unqualified filmmaker, right? Maybe I lack the creative mind to be truly successful in this industry. Maybe I lack the real depth of storytelling, right? And you'll notice something about both of these things, right? Feeling like an underqualified leader, feeling like an underqualified storyteller. These are both things that you can learn and improve at. And what's funny is that they can be two sides of the same coin. And you can really start to see the inconsistency in your mind when it comes to these things. So if we analyze my own experience going from the military, becoming more established in there to now beginning to pursue filmmaking more seriously, it starts with the qualities one might look for in a military leader don't come supernaturally to me, right? Maybe I'm too much of an artsy guy. However, once you start pursuing creative endeavors, like making a short film, all of a sudden you can start to feel like, well, maybe I'm not as creative as the next guy. Maybe I lack the true connection to the human experience required to be a successful storyteller. And so what you start to see is that these things are really just noise, right? Michael Chandler, UFC fighter, has a good analogy for this where he talks about, in the context of your own mind, if you do not input positivity consciously, then your mind will subconsciously input negativity. It'll start telling you that you don't belong. It'll start telling you that you're not going to succeed. You have to constantly tell yourself at all times the thing you know to be true, which is that you have the ability to get better. So that's one aspect of it, right? Realizing that imposter syndrome is to be expected whenever embarking on a new endeavor. The second part of it is, and this is kind of uncomfortable, but I found it to be true, I think, is that imposter syndrome usually is an indicator that you're in the right place at the right time. What do I mean by that? Well, the second you start to feel complacent, you should be afraid. The second you start to feel comfortable, the second you start to feel confident, might not be time to stick around for much longer. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you should not seek to master a craft or a vocation to the point that it comes naturally to you. In fact, that's the place that you ideally want to be. But there's truth to the idea that you can max out, right? And what do you do in a video game when you max out? You prestige. You start over again from scratch. Usually, if you're pursuing something meaningful, it should scare you a little bit, and that in turn will come with a little bit of imposter syndrome. There's a breakdown by a Harvard professor who said to use your imposter syndrome, but don't let it overtake you. This is very true. David Goggins once said, you must always set goals that you think you cannot achieve. There's a lot of truth to that. In fact, the more I undertake challenging things, the more I begin to think that what separates the successful from those who don't succeed is largely the degree to which you're able to withstand the feeling of being an imposter, push forward and say, despite maybe not being the most qualified, despite clearly being less talented than this guy and less naturally strong or naturally smart than this guy, I'm going to keep moving forward and I'm going to do the best that I can at this thing, at making this short film, at leading this project, at running this race. And I'm going to finish. And even if I'm not the best, even if I don't even make a big enough splash to really turn anyone's head at that time, I'm building up a character and I'm building up a resume that will speak for me. Truth is, imposter syndrome is a tale as old as time. It's biblical even, right? What is Moses' response in the Exodus story when God calls him to save Egypt? Why me? Who am I that you would call me? So this is an age-old response to facing our callings. What I've learned is that people can become uncomfortable with that feeling, and they can use it as an excuse to fall back, draw away from a particular challenge. And that results in living a mediocre existence. But realizing that being somewhat unsure of your footing in a situation is kind of an indicator that you're doing something dangerous and risky and interesting and worth doing. If you're related to the themes in this video, then you might want to check out some of my more highly produced content like memoirs, which covers my journey through the military and the lessons learned therein. A lot of the thoughts and insights that I've shared today come from that journey. But if you enjoyed it, stick around. There'll be plenty more like this in the future. See you soon.